Hey guys, FastestPastor here. Just recorded a video for you today, and you're going to be seeing that soon. But I just wanted to let you know what it's about so you can hang in for the full length of it. It's a little bit longer video, but I'm going to be talking about why I should be dead. About the triumph of my parents keeping me alive when I was born. And also there's a story as well that I tell from my college days about a friend of mine who, I'm just going to call her Melissa for now, and how she overcame both a rape and a pregnancy out of that rape. So tune in, watch the video, subscribe and like to us, but here it goes. God bless you.
Hey you guys, FastestPastor here, and yes, this is me. I'm going to tell you guys why my title says I should be dead. Listen, I was born a twin, life wasn't easy. We struggled when we first were born. My sister and I, we were underweight, underdeveloped. But my mom and my dad stayed by our side with my older sister and continued to nurse us to health. At about a month old, the doctor agreed to let us come home. And when we were home, my sister began to continue to grow in weight and size, and I went backwards. In fact, by the time that my mom could convince the doctors to bring me back into the hospital, at that moment I was about 3 pounds. And the doctors had told her just to bring me in, and she's like, what are you guys going to do? And they're like, just bring him back in. And essentially what they had told her is, bring him back in so he can die. And my mom wasn't willing to accept that, so she continued to ask them, what can I do? What can I do? What can we do? And she finally went to the hospital to see the doctor in person. He's like, listen, about the only thing you can do is continue to try to feed him, but you're going to have to feed him constantly. But you're going to have to bring him back into the hospital. But we don't have a vital piece of equipment he needs, and that's a premature, what they called a hot water bed. And the nurse heard the doctor talking to my mom about what this bed looked like and what it did. And she told her husband, who was a carpenter, and unbeknownst to my mom, over the weekend, he spent all weekend and made this hot water bed for a preemie, being me. And so when mom went back in the hospital to check me in, there was a brand new bed waiting for me. And my mom was diligent. She came to the hospital several days, stayed with me as much as she could. And to the much unbelief of the doctors, I continued to stay alive. And after about 20 some odd days in the hospital, I finally picked up an ounce and began to grow and put on weight, defeating death. If my mom would have listened to those doctors, I should have been dead. But I'm so thankful that my mom, being a stubborn Sicilian Irish woman, wasn't willing to take what the doctor said, and my mom and dad were both willing to fight for my life. You know, it's odd when I look at these pictures. You know, I've got me. This is shortly after I was born. You can see how small I was there. I was about 4 pounds in that picture. What's interesting is this will show you how small I was. This picture is actually me at over a half a year old. I know, hard to believe nowadays. And then I'll show you another picture here. This is just under a year old. Here we are. And then I have another picture. This is our year birthday, and you can see I'm finally starting to catch up to my sister. And there's my mom. You know, I have very interesting parents. They were married young. I have an older sister. She's about 4 years older than me. But I think about my parents and how hard they worked to keep me alive. And the fact that they weren't willing to accept just bring your son in to die. Instead, they wanted to see me live and to grow. And this really rings hard on my heart because I see all the things on the news and media about how much we're devaluing babies and their lives. And you know, what's interesting is I look at this picture of me when I was first born, right here. And given the age I was at this moment, because I was born early with my twin sister, that her and I could have been dismembered and killed partially coming out of the womb. That today's legislation in New York, that would be perfectly fine. And I don't want to get into the debate of when people think a baby becomes a baby, but it's universally, generally accepted across all facets of life that at that point in a baby's life, they are a baby and they are a human that has rights. And somehow, over the years, we have destroyed that. While we're perfectly accepting of all kinds of walks and we're supposed to take everything that comes to us and help people figure out what their identities are and everything else, that somehow in all of this, we've hardened our hearts so bad that we could allow those things to happen to a baby. And I think about my parents who fought so hard to keep me alive and other people who are just willing to just throw life away. Now listen, I'm not saying this to bring anybody condemnation. If you've ever had an abortion, if you're contemplating abortion, there's hope. There's hope. There's help. Even though it seems helpless or hopeless, there's help. And I know in the good book, in the Bible, Jesus loved everybody where they were at. And I'm commanded to love everybody. And I'm saying this and I'm sharing this message with you because I love you guys and I want you to know that there is hope. I want to share a story with you of a friend of mine from college. Her name was Melissa. And Melissa and I used to help each other with calculus and pre-algebra. And not pre-algebra, algebra 2 and calculus. And so we would tutor each other in each one. And one night she called before I'd left the dorm and she says, Don, I'm going to have to bring someone tonight. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah. She said, I'll introduce you when I get there. So we met at the library and she brought her daughter. I didn't even know she had a daughter. And her daughter was about 6 years old. And Melissa at this time, I don't think was much over 26, 27. And we started talking about her daughter and you could tell, I mean, this was a mom that her daughter was her everything. Her daughter was amazing to her and she was. Her daughter was beautiful. She was fun. She was funny. She was just cute. And we began to talk about her daughter, and then I said, well, what's the story? Where's Dad? And she said, Don, there was a time in my life in which I didn't want my daughter, in which I thought she was the most painful thing that could ever happen in my life. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, let me tell you why. She said, my daughter is a result of me being raped from a man I didn't even know. And my heart broke at that moment, and I said, well, what happened? And she began to tell me the horrific details of her rape. And then she began to tell me that after that, a lot of her friends encouraged her, you need to abort this baby. You don't want to live with that constant reminder of what that man took from you. And so she made an appointment in Madison. She went to Madison. They were very encouraging for the abortion, she said. She said it was amazing. She said they just made me feel so empowered that this was going to change my life for the good as soon as it happened. And so it was a very quick time from the appointment to where I got my appointment for the abortion. She says, I remember changing into my gown and going into the pre-op room. And I'm laying there in this cold room in this gown. And my dad, who I had a fractured relationship. She said at this time we had a very fractured relationship. Before this, didn't talk much. My dad didn't show me a whole lot of love growing up. He came in out of nowhere and literally busted down the door with people clinging to him and women yelling at him and screaming at him to get out of there. And he scooped me off that bed and he says, I'll help you raise this baby. Just please don't make this choice now. And so he picked her up and carried her out of that clinic with people yelling and screaming, threatening to call the cops. And Melissa said she could just sit there and cry and she didn't know what to do. And he put her in the car and buckled her up and they pulled away. And he says, I know I haven't been the best father in the world, but please let me help you with this. And so when they got home, he carried her into the farmhouse and they began to talk. And he gave her some information and some tapes that he had gotten of women who both aborted and kept their babies after rape, and gave her statistics. And she said, Don, after a lot of deliberation and thinking about it, she said, I decided to keep that baby. She said, I didn't think it was fair for me to strip away life, the very thing he took away from me. He by raping me, she said, he took away my freedom, my love, my compassion, and my self-worth, and dignity. That's what he stole from me. And I was just going to continue that vicious cycle by aborting this baby who was totally innocent in this whole thing. And she said, at that moment, I knew I was going to keep the baby, but she said, I really had thought I'm going to put it up for adoption, because at least then life is given and I don't have that reminder. And she said she went through full-term pregnancy, and when her baby was born, it was at that moment when she first saw her daughter that she said she knew she had to keep her. And she says, Don, every day it's a constant reminder of what is good in life. She says, there's not one regret. And she says, I know a lot of people would think, I would think about that rape and all the hurt would come back, but she said, instead, I have triumph. I have triumph because I still love, I still have compassion, I still have regard for myself, I have dignity, and even more importantly, I have my daughter who is so much like myself growing up. And she said, and I wanted my life to be worth something and my daughter's life to be worth something. See, there's still people willing to fight, and no matter where you're at, no matter what you're thinking, I think about Melissa all the time, and if she can make it through, if she can make that decision, I certainly hope you out there can consider making the same decision. And know that there is forgiveness and there is healing for both of those. Just as Jesus died on the cross for our sins, God sent him as his only son because he loved us. The whole Bible is just a love story to us about a God who wants us to love him. And yes, we still have free will, which is why bad things happen. But the reason why we have free will is you can't have love without free will. You have to have free will to have love. And so no matter where you're at, if you're contemplating life decisions, maybe you've got a drug habit, maybe you are dealing with an unwanted pregnancy or an unplanned pregnancy, or maybe the doctors are telling you need to abort it or whatever, I encourage you to reach out. There's CareNet pregnancy centers across the world. There's Christian-based pregnancy centers. There's videos, and I am second to help you deal with just about everything you could imagine in life. But my prayer is that you reach out to someone and let them know how you're feeling, and you share that before you make any decision that may end a life. And I certainly hope the things that we see in New York come to pass and get reversed. But you never know. So you guys, I just thank you so much for tuning into my channel. I know this is probably a little bit more of a serious video than what you thought. But my heart just breaks because I think about, what if my parents would have valued this little boy's life as much as some of the people do nowadays? I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be speaking with you, and I wouldn't be sharing with you my story. So I encourage you guys to stay tuned. Next video is going to be more about the car in Pikes Peak. Again, follow me, subscribe, like me, FastestPastor. You're going to continue to see videos from us. We're going to continue to go back and forth between my life growing up and how I got to fulfill my childhood dream of going to Pikes Peak, hopefully, and also about the journey of Pikes Peak. God bless you guys. Love you. Stay tuned.